thought I had changed it in the setup, and as soon as I went to go live, gave me grief. So bear with me. There's a few wobbles while I get it screwed on tight again. There we go. Once again, we're in vertical mode. I just can't help it. Okay, I'm Susan Smith. Welcome to my studio, Stitched by Susan. Today I'm talking a little bit about why I float quilt tops, and I've entitled this episode, The Number One Reason That I Float Quilt Tops. So I will give you that one and a number of supplementary reasons as well. I'm just waiting for a few people to come on. YouTube is clearly still putting it out there. It's taking a minute today for a few people to join in. There we go. All of a sudden I'm seeing people tune in. Okay. Again, I'm Susan Smith. Welcome to my studio, Stitched by Susan. We are filming in upright mode today. I don't know. I have more trouble with my camera. Once you've started the live, you can't change it, and it's I don't know. I've got a miscue going on there somewhere. Anyway, talking today about why I float quilt tops. Maybe even what does that mean in case you've never heard that term before. Floating a quilt top simply means that when I load it at the long arm, I do not actually have the remainder of my quilt rolled on a roller. It's just floating over the top of my working surface and hanging down in front of me. And so is the batting, actually. Here it is, all in under here. Kind of genius. Why would I want to do that? Why in the world? Well, my number one reason for doing it is simply this: speed, efficiency. I have to back up though a little step, because sometimes when I say that, I get a little pushback like, well, it's not all about being fast, and you're absolutely right. Quilting is not all about being fast. I do a lot of quilting for customers. So in my mind, quality is at the top. Quality of results, meaning a square quilt, a flat quilt, a quilt with no puckers, a quilt with good tension. Those quality things are absolutely paramount to me. Back when I was a kid, my mom always said to me, if it's worth doing well. I bet you've heard that before too. So that is already baked into me, doing something with high quality results, with care, with precision. However, my also natural inclination is, if I can find a faster way to get the same good results, I'm going to go for it. Of course I am. Look at you all tuning in. Let's say hi to everyone before we dive in. The cheeky quilters. Hey, Amber, I want to float, she says. Okay, I'll show you how to float, Amber. And I can't swim or float really either. But I can float quilt tops. Laura Gray, Wilma, Helen, Nancy, lovely to see you. Okay, again, I'll quickly show you because quite a few of you have just joined. I'm talking about floating quilt tops, which simply means that at the long arm, I don't have the whole bulk of my quilt rolled onto a roller. It's just floating across the surface and hanging down in front of me. And as I advance the quilt, well, that rolls up and gets quilted. Why would I do that, and how come it works? Well, I do it for speed and efficiency, and I've learned ways to manage that fullness so I still get really, really, really good results. I don't want any pleats in my quilt. I don't want my quilt to be veering off of square, right? I don't want it to be uncontrolled, but I do like the idea of floating it. So how does it save me time? Well, simply rolling it onto a roller takes a certain amount of time. You've got to have a straight edge, you've got to attach that edge, and you've got to roll it up smoothly. And if some rolls a little faster than others, or if the quilt is a little bit wonky, you can get all kind of problems there, and you might have to unroll and re-roll and unroll and re-roll a few times to get it smooth. It just takes a lot more time to do that. Basting is another possibility, and some quilters do that. They'll baste their working area, they'll advance the quilt, baste it, baste again until they get to the bottom, and then the whole thing is secure and absolutely can't move. That's an absolutely acceptable way, but again, it does take more time. So if you want to see more about how I float it and maybe even more of all my processes for keeping things square, tune into my live and unscripteds that I do a couple times a month where I'm working on an actual quilt. And I'll go through how I advance my quilt and all the steps I take to keep things smooth and square. But suffice it today to say, I do take precautions. I have a measuring tape. Can you see that on screen a little bit up here? I have a measuring tape with some measurements on it that help me to keep things square, to know that my quilt is progressing in a square fashion. I do things like tugging my batting every time I advance. I watch my seam lines to make sure that everything's staying straight. So I do take all kinds of precautions, all kinds of steps to manage that quilt top surface so that it does stay beautifully flat and square. But ultimately, I have found that floating is by far the fastest way for me to do a quilt. I say so often, there's not only one way, and I'm not going to say you have to do it this way or you can't do it that way. Find what works for you. But for me, for all these reasons, floating has proved to be a really, really great way of running my quilting. Okay, let's buzz back through comments. Janet, Angie, I've never done anything but float. I've tried a few other things but floating because I wanted to kind of know what I was talking about, right? And I always come back to it because floating, maybe just because I'm so used to it, but floating is so much faster for me. Kirsten, thanks to you, I float my quilts and love it. Good deal. Rianne, I've changed to floating my quilts since I found you and love it. I'm so happy to hear this. The Cheeky Quilters, this roll, I think she means I roll, but I don't like it. I need to do something different and better. I encourage you to experiment with this. You know, by all means, experiment and find what works for you. But if you don't like the whole rolling it up thing, try floating. It's so much easier. Janet, learning about the magnets from you has been wonderful for my quilting. Yes, and I didn't mention that. That's one of the steps, is you do still need to secure this front edge because you don't want it to be out of control, right? That's not the goal, to have it all willy-nilly. The goal is to find quicker, faster ways to control it. And putting magnets or C-clamps on the front rail is one great way to control this front edge so it can't shift while you're quilting. Tammy, I do that with my quilt tops. Nancy, I've learned so much from you. That's how I float my quilts now. So good. Wilma, my quilts have become squares. Thank you. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Having those lovely 90-degree corners, and when you lay the quilt out, it lays flat, no wonkiness. That's the ultimate achievement, right? That makes us feel so good. By the way, and I have no way of showing you because it's so huge, I did finish that humongous wonky quilt that I was working on last Friday live, May 9, I think it was. I did finish it, and it does lay beautifully flat. It is, as expected, it's a bit bulgy at the sides, and I knew it was going to be that way, so that did not come as an ugly surprise. But overall, I'm so pleased with the management of that. And I totally forgot, I was going to show you guys the red and white quilt that I worked on yesterday. Gosh, how badly do you want to see it? Because I have to walk off camera to get it. Okay, hang on a sec. I'll keep talking to you while I go off camera. I'm going to walk around and get this little quilt and bring it back and show you, because I did quilt it yesterday. We were talking about high contrast fabrics and what thread to choose. So here's the red, and really it's not red and white, it's red and eggshell quilt. Can you see my quilting? It's wavy lines. So the thread I used was a few shades deeper than the eggshell, so well into the tan range. Even the backing of the quilt is also red and eggshell, right? So I'll try and catch the light just a little bit there with it. I'm pleased with the results. I did confer with the owner of the quilt, like, was she happy with that? You know, would she prefer red? Would she prefer eggshell? Was she okay with the tan? And we agreed on that, and I'm happy with the result. It's subtle, but a little bit deeper than the eggshell. Someone commented yesterday after the show that they too like the sort of middle of the road idea, shows up a bit on both colors of fabric, and that's why they avoid variegated threads. And I realized I never did talk about variegated yesterday, because that is sometimes people's solution to when there's a strong contrast in colors in a quilt. Maybe it's got blues and yellows and greens, or red and white. Like, you can find red and white variegated threads, absolutely you can. But to my eye, that's just another confusing story, because where red ends up on red, it disappears. Where white ends up on white, it disappears. But where white ends up on red, it shows brightly. So to me, that looks like on, off, and I don't love that. I'd rather a subtle contrast like this tan that is the same throughout. personal preference, absolutely. Okay, Brenda, because of you, I only float my quilts. Yay, you guys are like my little support team here. I love that. Helen, love your thread choice, good. Janice, middle of the road works for me. Cheeky quilters, I don't like variegated. You know, some people love it, and sometimes I've seen it used to good effect. I love it best when it's a variegated thread on a solid color quilt, because then it's the story, right? But I think when variegated thread is used on printed or colored fabrics, you get stories that look like this. This is a tangle, but my opinion. Kirsten, looks beautiful. I finished a colorful baby quilt. Good. And took your advice about thread and like it very much. Good. I'm happy to hear that. All right. Here's the scoop, you guys. I'm coming live every day, Monday to Saturday, for all of this month and into the first little bit of June, just talking about sort of everyday topics in the quilting studio. So if you have questions or things you'd like to chat about or things that I could perhaps hold up and show you, feel free to type them into the comments. I do read them each day, and I'll try and come back and group together some of those questions and chat about them. I have a whole list of ideas, but nothing is carved in stone. So happy to add in your questions and topics as they occur to you. So by all means, let me know. Thumbs up if you enjoy these episodes, and if you turn on the notification bell, YouTube will handily let you know when I go live. I try and do it in the mornings, Pacific time. So that's the scoop there. Angie, I like using variegated. I'll be using one today that has all the same colors as in the quilt top. There you go. There's room for everybody's taste and preferences. So I'm glad you know what you like, Angie. That's fabulous. Golden Pennington, how far is your frame from the wall? Meaning my quilting frame? Oh gosh, close to 2 feet. But I gotta be honest with you, most people have their quilting frame facing the wall because you can put it a lot closer. I just have mine oriented this way because usually I have cameras out there when I'm doing my live episodes, right? And I need to be able to face the cameras. So very few people stand with their back to the wall when they're quilting. It's usually the machine is up against the wall and they're standing on the other side. So use that for whatever it's worth. All right, you guys, that looks like it's it for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow morning with another topic yet to be determined. So see you then. Have a great day.